Once again, you've backed us into a corner where there's no segue to the next topic.
The hard pivot. The hard pivot.
But for Behind the Keyboard, today I wanted to talk about, I don't know, what do we want to talk about? Oh, yeah, with spring training opening. I know that none of us have ever covered baseball full time, but we've dabbled here and there. So I wanted to open it up and see what good stories you all had from whether it's baseball coverage, inside a clubhouse, anything tangentially related to the greater world of Major League Baseball that sticks out to you.
So the best story that I have to offer, this is also the closest I've ever been to covering baseball full time, was in 2016 when this was going into my senior year of college. I interned for WEEI under Rob Bradford, basically just going to Fenway every day and working under him. So one day we're in the clubhouse, and this is okay. So 2016, I'm not sure if this name will mean anything to you guys, but do you remember Michael Martinez?
Absolutely.
The red.
I remember. I remember. The more obscure a Red Sox player is, the more likely I am to remember them.
Yeah, he was just a ton of fun. He was a waiver ad in like May, and I think he didn't even last the season. The fun fact is he ended up being the final out of the World Series that year. He went back to Cleveland, and he was the last out of the season, but he did have like a 4-month run with the Red Sox. If I remember correctly, he was a second baseman. He was like an infielder or something like that. But the Red Sox, out of nowhere, were like, we need a right fielder. So Michael Martinez is going to play right field one day. And it was this very windy day, and he was just like a disaster out in right field. So the next day, we're standing in the clubhouse. And this is like the number one lesson that I got from Rob Bradford that I always remember is he'd always get so pissed when people would just stand around in the clubhouse. He'd be like, if you're not going to get in here and do something, just get out. Don't like crowd around the clubhouse, like go in there with a purpose. So I'm standing in there with him, and he's going on this diatribe about standing around in the clubhouse. And he's like looking around, and he goes, there's Michael Martinez over there. He goes, why don't you go over there and ask Michael Martinez about the first time he ever played the outfield and see what he says. So I was like, all right, sure. And I was 21, I think. I was still pretty young at the time. And I walk over and I'm like, hey, Michael, do you have a second? And he just goes, I don't speak English. And so I go back to Rob and I'm like, he just told me he doesn't speak English. So he goes, well, let's find the translator. So I go and I'm looking around for the translator, and they're like, oh, the translator's off today. And so it was just like, all right, the translator's off. I was like, I'm shit out of luck. And so there's like
that's when you got to get out your Spanish English dictionary and you got to go up.
Well, so I've always billed myself as semi-fluent in Spanish because I took 5 years growing up, and the last 2 years the classes were taught entirely in Spanish. Like I understood and could speak and read and write in Spanish, and at 21 I was only like 3 years removed from that. So I'm sitting there thinking, like, is this my moment to try a bilingual interview? And I was like, absolutely not. So Brad Foe's intention was in the right place, but I ultimately just got shut down very quickly by Michael Martinez.
That's pretty good. I also built myself up as a fluent French speaker, but I actually don't have any idea what I'm doing. I don't have any in-person Red Sox reporting experience, which is a bummer, because during my 8+ year, maybe 7 or 8+ year stint at Nesson, when it was abundantly clear that my preference was for baseball, my manager at the time, Ben, just never sent me to a Red Sox game, which, I harbor some resentment over that. But
I knew this was going to come up. You bitched about that all the time when we were at Nesson.
Did we ever really cover Red Sox then, though?
There was also this carrot dangled in front of me one time that we were going to send me and someone else to Fenway when the Angels and Ohtani were going to be in town. And then the game got rained out or something, and it just
Ohtani was hurt. That's what it was. I remember we were going to be there for every Ohtani game, and then Ben scrapped the plans because he either wasn't playing or he was hurt or something like that. He's like, we're not going to cover a June series against the Angels if Ohtani's not playing.
Yeah, so people don't forget. But anyway, But
Tyler
my
Ward is, or whoever would have been the main thing is,
Ty Buttry, maybe. I think Ty Buttry was the closer at the time.
Who was the outfielder? Cole Calhoun. He would have
Cole
been there
Cal.
then, right?
Oh
He
yeah,
killed the Red Sox too.
he would hit moonshots for the Red Sox and then he'd get DFA'd the next week. It's like, oh, I guess this guy actually sucks.
Yeah. Anyway, I have two experiences covering things on site at Fenway. One was the Harvard, was it Harvard Yale? Either way, Harvard was playing. It must have been Harvard Yale, and it was at Fenway. That was cool. But the one that I remember most is before I started working at Nesson, when I was working at the Globe as just a correspondent, mostly doing high school sports. Occasionally, I would go do big events like the Winter Classic at Gillette, and then I also did this event at Fenway called Big Air Fenway, and they put a huge ski and snowboard ramp in the middle of the field. I mean, this thing was up like higher than the Green Monster by a good amount, and yeah, these guys would just go down it, do huge jumps or whatever, and but it was just interesting going to it and seeing the entire park completely taken over by ski and snowboard bros. And the media that came and covered it was just a completely different crowd than what you're used to going to Boston sports events, where it was just a bunch of crunchy riders and snowboard and ski people. I remember overhearing one group complaining about the granola that was on that was on offer in the media room at Fenway. But yeah, it was just a bizarre event seeing that happen at Fenway Park and just seeing the crowd, the kind of reporters that were working there. At the end, I got to take like the stairs all the way up to the top of the ramp. And again, like you got to imagine that you're in the middle of Fenway Park, and I'm a good easily like 50 to 60 feet, maybe more above the Green Monster. So it's kind of a surreal experience.
That is cool. I do remember that.
Yeah.
So I actually have I have a few. I think the two that I'll share. One I will name names because it reflects well on said player. The other one I will not name names or even what team or stadium I was at when it happened because it would not reflect well on said player. So I guess I'll start with the bad one. I will never forget I was in the clubhouse before a game and there was some sort of charity thing that was going on, and a group of the players were supposed to go and meet with like some, sick kid or something. And one player, he was not a star, but he was very, very annoyed by his need to engage with a less fortunate child. He was just very, oh, we gotta go meet with a damn sick kid. Like what the hell? Like it was to the point I was like, wow, you might be the worst person I've like ever been around, because like that's like all they had to do was like go and take a picture, and I guarantee this wasn't a player that this kid would have known anyway. So I was like, wow, you're a terrible human being, and this will always color my opinion of you, because I always thought he was a decent player, but then after that I just did not want to see him do well. And he ended up getting cut, so that's good. But the other story that's kind of a good thing is so when I was first starting out, I covered high school sports in South Jersey in the Philly area, but there were occasionally times where it's the summer, there's not a lot of high school sports going on in the summer, and a lot of times like the full-time beat writers go on vacations and stuff, so occasionally I would have to go, just a handful of times I had to cover Phillies games, because the beat writer who was in our chain would be on vacation or whatever. So I'll never forget, it was a Phillies, I think it was the Brewers, and so I had to file something before the game, so I went to the Phillies clubhouse. There was the starting pitcher for the next day's game was talking, but there like really was not a lot going on. And this was like a national chain. So I was like, okay, I'll go into the visitors clubhouse and see if there's anything there that I can get just to like file as the pregame notebook item. And there was like nothing in there, but never forget the one guy who was in there. And I tried talking to, a couple of people, and they were like, nah, I don't have anything, man. But Milton Bradley was sitting at his his locker, and I was like, he was having a pretty good season at that point. So I asked, I was like, hey Milton, I was like, do you have a couple minutes? And he was like, yeah, sure, man. And he took the chair of like the players whose thing was, and he like cleaned it off, and he like tossed their thing like into their thing and rolled it up. He's like, sit down. So I can't remember what it was, but he talked to him for like a good 5-10 minutes, and he was engaging. He was great. And then he went out that night and got ejected because he's Milton Bradley. But but I always remember that because Milton Bradley, one of the most famous hotheads in the history of professional sports. The one time I met him, he was the most pleasant, nicest guy in the world, and he gave me something to file there before the game.
Thank you, Milton Bradley. Nice player, very nice player.
Oh, he was a great player. If he could have stayed on the field and not getting thrown out every week.
If he wasn't trying to tune up fans.
Yeah, in a future episode, we should maybe do best and worst players to interact with throughout our reporting days.
Yeah, that would be good. That's a good one. For this week, though, I think let's cut it there. Logan, Dakota.
Wait. Oh, hold on. No, I think we have one more thing to get to, and I just want to bring this up because this is part of this podcast is talking about news and news coverage. And I just need to say that I think significantly more media coverage needs to be paid to the fact that there is now a 3.1% chance that this asteroid is going to hit Earth in 2032. That is up from 2.3% a couple weeks ago. Do you have any idea, translated to 1 in X chances, what 3.1% is?
Yeah, 3
that
in
is
10.
a pretty substantial
3 in
jump,
100.
but
3 in 100. That's what 3%
One,
means.
no, that's 1 in 32% chance that this thing hits Earth. I'm just saying, it's only the size of it is a football field, which is like a city killer. But I'm just saying, can you imagine if this thing was like planet killing potential and it was 1 in 32% chance?
Well, I know you've got 9 hours of video games ahead of you, but maybe you can dig into that a little bit today.
I'm just saying, nobody's talking about it, but 1 in 32. Those are outrageously high chances of a football-sized asteroid hitting Earth.
So we will see, because that will be toward the end of President Musk's first term. So we'll see if all of this investment that we've made into the SpaceX programs and all that actually is going to bear some fruit, or if it was just more government waste at the hands of that fraud.
That's definitely the part where we should cut this off.
All right. I've been Ben for Logan and Dakota. Thank you very much for joining us. The NPC Sports Podcast. Have a great one, everybody.